It was like 1,000 degrees last time we did this. Now it's nice and cool. We're in fall mode already. All right, guys.
Hey, Kevin. John McKee, what looked like you have a pretty deep wide receiver room. What do you think he can add?
Yeah, I think anytime you can add a player like him to the room, just create more competition, it's great for the rest of the team. Howie does a really good job of just adding good players and adding depth and giving us more options to work with throughout the season because you're going to need as many bodies as you can. And I think he does a really good job of bringing guys in that can add to the team, and we're excited to have him.
How familiar are you with him, and what stands out most about McKee?
So I remember watching him, coming out of college, doing a lot of work on him. And then just kind of from since he's been in the league, just his ability to play different positions. He can move around. He's done a good job. He's had some injuries early on, but worked through those, and he's looked pretty good so far this past year. So excited to see what he can do today, especially.
One of his strengths.
General time frame that you brought in Dotson last year. From that experience, that can help you develop him this year.
Yeah, I think really. When you bring a guy in later in camp, right, they just have to be caught up to speed as fast as they can. But with us still having a couple weeks after this week, I think the timing's pretty good. Aaron Moorhead does a really good job. He's been with us the whole time. He knows the system, knows where we're going to go with things. And then he'll be familiar with like Devontae and some of the other guys to lean on. So I think from a standpoint of bringing a guy in, we're in a pretty good spot where he can still pick it up and feel confident in what he can do.
What do you think about his run blocking? And that's a big part of receiver play.
Yeah, so when we talk about run blocking, like the best thing that a guy can do is just give effort, right? And so he's going to be a maximum effort guy. We know that coming in. And then we got to do as coaches, put him in a spot to just not be in a bad position as far as schematically, with a certain body type one-on-one. You want to always make sure you have certain guys in certain spots. So that's kind of up to us as coaches. But really, when you look at it, it's got to be effort. And, if the guy's going to give a good effort, we can get what we want out of him.
Kevin, Nick had talked post joint practices that the one thing that concerned with the offense was negative plays. What do you think led to that?
I think really when you do like the joint practices, it's funny because Schwartz and I have talked before and after each practice, and we don't really know what he has in. He doesn't know what we have in. Like we got him on a couple things, then he got us on a couple things, and it was good to do that, to just really kind of not know schematically what they were going to do and what they were working on until after, and then we had the opportunity to kind of talk about it. So I think when you look at some of the negative plays like that, a lot of it has to do with just you don't really know what you're getting until you get it, and you're like, oh, okay. The same thing goes back and forth. Like I know in practice we hit a couple things on him that he missed, maybe wasn't expecting, but at least it was good for us to kind of go through and work through the process. And then you get good tape, right? So if there's something he did to us that we're like, oh wow, that was new. We haven't seen that yet in camp. Now we can talk about it, work through it, detail it out, and then go walk through it afterwards. So it's good that those situations come up.
Hey Kevin, when you bring in a new guy like this, you've had like Johnny, Anais,
Yep.
Darius all working here for since the spring. Is there a message to those guys? All of a sudden, maybe a roster spot looks less attainable. What do you have to say to them to kind of not let them get affected by it?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the business. Obviously, we all know that. But I think really when a guy comes in late like he did, like we have right now, this situation is those other guys need to understand, like, I got still another week to prove myself. I got to continue to work through this and do the best that I can. And then from there, the decision's up to, Howie and Nick and everybody upstairs. But I think ultimately, like, the guys understand it's all a competitive thing. And when you look at a back-end roster guy, you're not only competing for our roster, but you're competing for other rosters at all times. So I think it's important. And most guys start to understand that. And those guys, a lot of them are in year 2 and year 3. So I think they pretty much understand where they're at with that.
What do you think the tight end?
Oops, sorry.
Third tight end depth. What does it say that you guys were able to unload a guy and about the remaining guys, like Kylan and EJ are probably?
Yeah, I think this year especially, we've had a lot of depth in that room and the receiver room, obviously. But in the tight end room, there's different body styles and types in there. And when you look at that room, they've done a good job. Jason Michael's a really good tight end coach. I've known him for a while, worked with him. He does a really good job of developing guys and getting them, up to speed with our offense. And I think we have a bunch of different guys in that room that can fill different voids. And some of those guys are good special teams players. So I think when you look at the versatility of what we had in that room allows us to do kind of what we did with that move. But not only that, we feel very confident and comfortable with the guys that are still here.
Last year when you guys brought in Jahan Dotson, he was saying it kind of took him a little while to kind of get used to Jalen, get used to the offense. And obviously seeing that, are there things you can kind of take away from that to kind of help John McKee's adjustment to the team?
I think the biggest thing is he has some relationships with guys on our team already. And so even yesterday, I walked through with him. Once he starts to know that, hey, this is how the offense is compared to what you were, he can start to understand like how the working order is of the verbiage and things like that going forward. And then he'll have some of the guys to lean on a little bit differently, like Devontae, like, hey, what do I really need to know? How's this work? And things like that. So I think there's a little bit of a difference from that standpoint. But I do think, to your point, there's an accelerated ramp up version that you have to do for those guys, just to get them to practice today. For example, we have to do some things just to see what we have. So I think from him getting comfortable with the offense will take some time, but at least, he's got some guys that he can lean on to kind of get him through those little things that have happened for the last 4 years that he may not know about, but we can help him with.
With Will Shipley, he seems to have really developed running aspect, receiving aspect. Where is he in pass protection as far as being able to be that third down guy?
He's done a pretty good job. Pass protection is one of those unique things at the running back position where you got to get reps at it, right? So going against the Browns the other day was really good for him to see different blitz packages, unlike Vic. So he's seeing new things and getting exposed to that, because that's really what it comes down to, is just reps. You just got to see it full speed. We can walk through it, which we do, but like the full speed reps of seeing it, knowing how to do it, and what it feels like, because you're working with the O-line, right? You're working with those guys hand in hand on everything. So the communication and or fitting the blocks are super important. So the more he does it, I think the better and more comfortable he'll be with it.
How do you evaluate?
In past years, you had a better sense of those 6th and 7th O-line spots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where's that coming along, and how are you trying to figure those spots out?
Yeah, I know we talked about this last week a little bit. Like, Stout's such a good O-line coach. There's no doubt he's going to get somebody ready to go, and I think it'll work itself out, and it'll continue to kind of sort itself through this week and going forward. So I think we're all confident in what we'll do going forward, and we'll have that guy.
How do you evaluate the quarterback play from Saturday's game?
So really, when you look at the quarterback play, like, we had a couple negative plays that got us behind the sticks a little bit. So when that starts to happen, you're trying to play back on schedule, so it's difficult. Unfortunately, as far as reps in practice, we try to get them as many as we can. But this past week was a heavy starters practice, right, against the Browns. So they had very few exposure reps against those guys. So in the game, it was a little bit different for them, probably than it was the first game, where they were more of a rhythm. They were taking reps leading into that first game against the Bengals. So I think it was a little different for them. Hopefully this week they can get a little more, rhythm and going. But it's hard when you have those negative plays. It kind of can set you back a little bit and push you in a bad spot.
You're self-pedaling EJ's return from the hamstring. When would you ideally want him back?
Say that again.
If JJ's return is being self-pedaled because of status and being better, and when would you ideally want him back to prepare for the regular season?
I mean, he's doing a lot of stuff mentally to kind of, stay obviously sharp and make sure he's good with his game and things like that. And really, that's up to him and the trainers. Whenever they're ready to cut him loose, I think they'll cut him loose. So I know he's staying active within us, staying his mind in the playbook and everything with what we're doing. So I think whenever they feel like he's ready to go, we'll get him back.
Kevin, Darian Kennard's gotten some work at left guard. What stood out to you about the summer he's had?
He's done a good job, right? So he's had to bounce around. Last year, he's pretty much playing tackle. Now he's playing guard. And you want guys that are versatile. And with him being versatile, I think that just adds value. So continue to kind of move him around to see what else he can do is just going to add value.
Have you already begun game planning for week 1?
We've kind of done a little bit. It's difficult. How these weeks work for us are kind of like fast paced. Like the other day, we were literally working on 2 practices, a Jets preseason plan for the young guys, and then what we're doing the next week in between that kind of dead period before the Cowboys. So like there's 3 and 4 things happening. That day off that we had, there was a lot going on just for this week, kind of a final install stuff, rep some things in practice today and tomorrow that we want to make sure we get full speed before we get into that game week. So there's a lot kind of going all at once, and we're trying to sort through it. But I think once we get through this week, right, it calms down. We kind of shift our focus, which will be nice, and get ready for the game.
In Tanner's case, what is it about his development that makes you comfortable and confident that he doesn't need the full preseason schedule?
I think he's gotten so many good reps, really, and even this past week against the Browns, it was so good to see him against different guys and different rush patterns and protection things he had to solve. I think that's been really valuable for him. And really, when you look at his whole body work, him getting to play last year in a full game was awesome, right? So that was the biggest exposure he could get to prepare and go against the Giants. That really helped him. And since then, he's just kind of continued to grow. I think him sitting for a year or so really helped his development as well, just kind of understand the pace and the speed of the game and the knowledge. And since then, he keeps climbing, which is great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.